so much for taking the time to tune in this lovely Wednesday night hump we got going here on this channel every Wednesday night. Same time, same bad channel. We do this live on Wednesday nights, 11 p.m. Central European Time, live from Amsterdam. I'm Mike Williams, and thank you so much for taking your time to show up tonight and join into this kind of interesting discussion, I think, tonight. It's part two of one that we were having in our last live stream. So we're going to get into that in a little bit tonight, but let me make my adjustments here, folks, if you don't mind, and mute my sound, which is always a good thing. I was a little late in setting up tonight, so you guys have to forgive me. All right, I think we're ready to go here. How's everybody doing this evening? So good to be here. Scott, thank you so much for showing up as always. I appreciate you modding tonight, a great mod I have here on this channel. Yeah, let's get into it. So, interestingly enough, I've been digging around for, great. I've been digging around for parts, as you guys know. And I've been sort of indicating that I think that it is an excellent idea for any musician. And by the way, this is a musician channel for musicians. We're going to talk about gear tonight, like we always do. So if you're interested in that type of a topic, then buckle in. We got great stuff for you here tonight. But I have a Telecaster, probably, hopefully, my forever Telecaster coming in. At my age, that's a strange thing to say. Mr. Watts in the house. How you doing, Michael? Good to see you. That's a strange thing to say, but the truth of the matter is that I've been on the hunt for a Telecaster since I sold 5 years ago now. I can't believe it. My Japanese made in Japan Fender. And parts are something also that has been coming to the forefront of my thoughts lately, because really, seriously, with these tariffs and things that have been going on, hey, Ben, welcome. How you doing? Good to see you. Good evening. Everybody's showing up. Hey, good to have you guys here. And everybody else new watching as well. Thank you so much for showing up, tuning in. Yeah, and parts are something that's been on my mind, but I've been looking for pickups for that Telecaster. Because I know for a fact from playing it, having played the same guitar years ago, that those were ceramic pickups. That much I do remember. I don't mind ceramic pickups, especially the older Japanese ones from the 80s and 90s. They were actually 70s, 80s, and 90s. They were actually okay sounding. But I thought to myself, well, I can always take those out and put them back in again. It's my guitar. I'm not planning on selling it. But modding it and putting in a right pickup combination is something that I've been thinking about. I have a bare knuckles mule neck pickup for Telecaster that was kindly given to me. Thank you so much, as always, for that. And I want to match it with a bridge. I have a set of Tone Rider pickups, a full set, neck and bridge, but they're Alnico 3, both neck and bridge. And I'm thinking, well, why don't I just take the bridge from that one set and add it with that Tone Rider. I believe the Tone Rider is an Alnico 5 in the neck. So an Alnico 5 in the neck and an Alnico 3 in the bridge combination. And that's because that's what I got. So instead of going out and buying an Alnico 5 bridge, I said, well, let me just do a little mixing and matching, which is something I haven't done before on a Telecaster. They were all Alnico 5 Telecaster pickups in my made in Japan. But I looked it up, and interesting enough, I found out, see, when you start getting into these little, projects and things, you find out some interesting facts. And I found out the interesting fact that the Blackguard Telecasters from the 1950s, actually, most Telecasters up until the mid 50s had a combination of an Alnico 2 in the neck and an Alnico 3, I'm sorry, an Alnico 5 in the neck and an Alnico 3 in the bridge. And I didn't know that. A lot of people feel that that combination of an Alnico 5 neck and an Alnico 3 magnet in the bridge pickup is the reason why those earlier Telecasters have that twang to them. They say, especially in the middle position, um, it is that quintessential Telecaster sound. So I was excited because I just happened to have those laying around. And so, of course, I'm going to enjoy the pickups that this guitar that I have coming in from Japan. It's a made in Japan from the 90s Telecaster. I'll talk about it a little bit tonight. But I'm excited to enjoy the pickups that it came. It's all original. But I do prefer to try that combination. It just so happens I have them laying around with a soldering iron. My problem is that I ran out of good solder. I only have the non-lead solder right now, and I really don't like that stuff. I like the lead solder, and so you have to smuggle it in from different places, but it's actually getting harder and harder to find. Hell, you can't even get it on AliExpress anymore. Even the Chinese won't sell you lead solder. So, in any case, that's all right. I'll figure that out, but I'll put them in and uh, and see how that sounds after I get it in a bit and just feel it out as a general thing. But just that's just an interesting thing to me that um, those combinations of pickups and how they affect the tone of your guitar. Because I do believe that the number one thing in your guitar chain that's going to affect your sound is number one, your pickups, and number two, your amp. So, you know, to learn that that was the classic combination in a Telecaster, I'm excited because I plan on putting those in. So there is that. But that kind of got me, thinking about that Telecat. I've been thinking about it. It's not shipped yet. It won't get shipped to this weekend, unfortunately. But anyway, it will be coming. But I've been thinking about it, planning for it, because as you know, I like playing Telecasters. I've enjoyed the Les Pauls that I've had. I certainly have enjoyed the Stratocasters that I've had the opportunity and pleasure to own and play and share with you guys. But at the end of the day, I really just like a Telecaster, and I don't have one that I like. I didn't like the custom vibe. It just didn't suit me. And there were a couple of things about it that didn't suit me. And I've talked about those, but I thought tonight would be a good jumping off point. That would be a good jumping off point to talk about Japanese domestic only guitars and the ones that you'll never see. The ones that you'll never see. Imagine you're a guy in his mid 20s and you walk into a small music shop in Nagoya. Um, it's a quiet, overcast weekday. The shop smells like old wood and lacquer. And hanging on the wall are guitars that you've never seen before. Not Fenders, not Gibsons, not even Quartz, like you had when you were a kid. But names like Greco and Tokai and Ibanez. Yeah, I kind of know that, but Ibanez guitars that you've never seen before. Um, and something about them just feels right. Maple necks, rosewood boards, sunburst finishes, all beautifully built, but completely unfamiliar to me. And this is the story of myself when I first started touring in Japan. And in the mid in 1995, I walked into a music shop, maybe 96, for the first time in Japan, believe it or not, because that first year was just chaos. And I wasn't even thinking about that. But when I went in there, I was overwhelmed by guitars and basses that I had never heard or seen before. And the quality of them was great. So tonight we're going to delve into Japanese domestic only guitars. Guitars built for the local market, never meant for export. One of the things about the Telecaster that I have coming on its way that I bought is that it was only meant for domestic production and distribution. You will not find it in their catalogs. You may find it. Well, I'm getting ahead of the narrative here, but guitars like that were not budget guitars. They were in the mid-range guitars. At that time, their value was around $500 to $600. And isn't it funny? There used to be a time that was considered to be the mid-range guitar. Now, and inspired by Gibson Epiphone, will run you north of $1,000, and those are supposed to be mid-tier guitars. But back in the day, Maddie Two Hats, welcome, sir. How you doing? Welcome to the conversation. Welcome to the chat. And you know, these guitars really were just meant for domestic consumption only, and some of them are actually gems. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about it really, doing the research and trying to get some information on this guitar because I'm a kind of a guitar otaku. Mr. Rogers in the house. Hey, hi, everybody's here. Awesome. Welcome, folks. Welcome. Talk guitars tonight. Part two of the discussion, so you can catch the last live stream to catch part one. But part two tonight. Part one, I focused on Japanese guitars in general. Tonight, I'm really going to focus in on domestic-only guitars that you'll never hear about. You have to do some digging to find them. But if you're planning a trip to Japan, or if you don't mind doing a little digging, a little research, and I'll talk about some tools that you can use that can help you out at the end here. But if you're in the market for something like this, I think you'll be quite pleased. Now, a Japanese domestic-only guitar was built only for the Japanese home market. And the only way that these guitars really got out of Japan is via United States military, particularly in Kanagawa and in Osaka. And of course, what's the name of that? I can't think of that port right now. Anyway, Navy guys. And they generally are the ones that were bringing a few of them over. Not, and there weren't many of them made anyway because the domestic market wasn't that large. So they didn't produce a lot of them. But that was the conduit for which some of these domestic guitars did get out of the country, but for general practical purposes, they were really only supposed to be domestic only. They were not included in any of their international catalogs or any of their exports. So, and I will add to that, that these guitars were not to be found even in some of the domestic catalogs. Even some of they were guitars that shops would order and order them special. And they would sell them in their shops. They would make a deal with, in this case, Aria Pro II, and say, hey, we want a mid-tier, around $500 Goman yen guitar. And can you arrange this amount of these and ship them to us? And they'd say, great. And that's something that wouldn't end up in the catalog. So they were often sold in person at brick and mortar shops across Japan, is the gist of that story. Now, these guitars weren't cheap knockoffs. Many were flagship models of the brands that they represented in Japan. This particular, and I should, I'm talking it up. I can't wait to get it in. It'll be another 2 weeks, but it'll be here from Japan. This particular Aria Pro II Legend Telecaster that I got falls into that category. I have searched, And I've used all my tricks in order to, in Japanese and English, to find out as much background about this as I can, because of course when it comes, I'd like to do a video on it and discuss it in detail. And there's not a lot of information to be found. And one of the reasons is because it is a domestic only model. It was not meant to ever be exported, and it was in no catalogs. And it was probably sold by one of the big music chain stores there in the mid 90s. So that's the reason why they're unknown. They had no global marketing. There was no reviews in Guitar Player or even Total Guitar magazines. And just to remind you that there was no such thing as eBay or Harmony Central or Reverb or anything like that back then. So, again, the only way they got out at all or any kind of word of mouth is through other musicians talking about them. Like in the case of this Telecaster, the owner of the shop at Millennial owned one that he loaned to me that I used for a gig for 2 nights and fell in love with it. And I found another one until now because they knew the quality of these guitars and they didn't have a tendency to hold on to them. So there's that. Question here. Scott Bogfoot. Mike, where in Japan are guitars made? Do they have well-known guitar making cities like Corona, Memphis, Bozeman, and Kalamazoo? Yes, they do. Nagoya and Matsumoto and are the big places. I have deep roots with Matsumoto myself, and the guitar factories there. Fujigen, which Matsumoku come from that area, where basically where the Nagano Olympics were held. If you guys are old enough to remember that, I believe that was 1996 or something like that. And that is the principal guitar, how it always has been. It started out that was a region where they were making wooden desks and tables for Singer sewing machines. Every housewife in America in the 1950s and 1960s had a Singer sewing machine. My mother had one. And the cabinet that it came in was probably made in Japan. And when that fad died out, much like the telephone booth went away with time, they had to switch their operations to something else. They were always making guitars, but they went full swing into guitars. So they have a very rich tradition in that area for making guitars. Now, one of the things that I like to do when I feature a guitar, like I plan to with this Aria Pro II that's coming, is to compare it with something that's supposed to be comparable to it, something that's supposed to come close to it. And again, like I said, one of the great things, there was the main point of last discussion. Again, if you haven't caught that last live stream, take a look at it, where I was pointing out the fact that these sleeper domestic-only Japan guitars are constructed better, handmade, like in the case of this one, it's a handmade guitar. The binding is put on by hand, it's not CNC. And the cost of them are a fraction of the current mid-tier guitars. And even with the cost of VAT and shipping, if you have such a thing, in this day of tariff wars, you probably do, but it's still under the value of current mid-tier guitars that aren't even giving you anything close to the features that you get on these domestic-only Japanese guitars. Case in point. Now, this Aria Pro II that I have is an Alder body. It's three-piece, but it's which is interesting because my 2002 Squire there, parts caster I put together, that's a three-piece Alder body as well. So, one of the reasons why I kept that body is because it's made out of Alder. It's a nice body. It's not basswood, which is interesting because my guitar, again, my made in Japan 1993 Telecaster was basswood with a maple neck. So it was inferior, actually, to this guitar. But they were in the same range, competing with each other. The thing that made that Fender have a little bit more cachet on it was, of course, because it had a Fender headstock on it. One-piece maple neck, not scarfed or laminated. A slab rosewood board, which is one of the reasons why in 1996 slab rosewood was really intended for their mid-tier to higher tier guitar. So you knew if it had that, this was not, your beginner's guitar. Now, this came with custom pickups that were designed by Aria Pro II, the CS1 and the OS1. These are ceramic pickups, as I pointed out, but they were voiced for their clarity and their warmth. But they will probably be replaced. So it's not a beginner guitar. In 1996, this would have cost enough to be considered a mid to pro level in Japan. You can feel the attention to details in smooth fret ends, a tight neck pocket. It's a sleeper, but it's not subtle in its gravitas. I always talk about guitars of quality have a certain gravitas to them. And some of these domestic ones from the 80s and 90s, again, with the quality of the build of them, handmade, a lot of them, you're just not going to beat that with your modern guitars, point in fact. So let's take a look at a modern guitar. I looked up the specs on the Fender Standard Telecaster. Now, this Fender Standard is being made in Indonesia right now, and it is coming in at a cost of, wow, that's incredible. Is that true? 602 euros? Yes, 602 euros that they're charging for this guitar. The body is popular. The neck is maple, but the fretboard material on this, and I tried to find a 3-color sunburst, just, it doesn't have binding like mine does, but it's an Indian laurel fretboard. So popular, maple, and Indian laurel, as opposed to alder, maple, and rosewood. These pickups are designed, you have to do a little digging. They're very coy with telling you exactly what these pickups are. They call them standard single coil pickups, but the truth is that they're amplified pickups, which are no different than the ones actually, by the way, that you would find in a custom vibe. If you were going based on pickups, you'd save yourself 200 euros or bucks and just go with the custom vibe again over this one, because the pickups are relatively the same amplified pickups. So if you compare those two together, you begin to see the gist of my point, that 600 euros versus the less than 200 euros that it's going to cost, including the VAT, for me to ship this thing, buy it, and ship it over. And I'm saving myself 400 euros there, and I'm getting a far superior guitar. Scott, Mike, have you ever tried shamisen? If so, what are they like? No, but I had the pleasure of attending a private concert for the shamisen that was played by twice actually now. Once in Japan a few years ago, and last year down here at the Rijksmuseum, because I'm a member of the Japan-Netherlands Business Association. And I would say it's a harp that is played, on its side, is what it kind of looks like. I guess it's a bit the closest thing that I could come to it, but the sound of it is, when played by a master, is beautiful. It's dreamlike. It's dreamy. That's the only way I can describe it. So yeah, even recently, I've had the pleasure of hearing a master play. Quite an experience. Why are so many of these guitars flying under the radar then? Okay, Mike. We hear what you're saying here. You're saying that these guitars are way better than current ones and they're way lot cheaper. Then why did they fly under the radar? Why don't we? Well, Aria Pro 2 is not exactly an unknown name. But again, they had a lot of domestic only brands that they were running. That would be considered lawsuit guitars. The headstock on this guitar is the classic Fender Telecaster from the 60s. So it is exactly, its design and shape and measurements are exactly that you would find on a 61 custom. But still in all, they were domestic focused in production, which meant local sales, which, as I pointed out in the beginning of this discussion, which meant less of a production on these things. They had tiered lines: export, domestic, and OEM, house brands, often with entirely different specs. Some they were allowed to get away with these headstocks even up into the mid 90s by Fender, as long as they remained domestic only guitars. The minute that guitar left Japan, then it became an issue. And so that's when Fender would, say, no, you can't do that. And so the Japanese obliged and they didn't do that. But there were these lawsuit guitars that you hear about: Fender Telecasters, Stratocasters, Les Pauls, that had all the accoutrements that you would find on a, the this mid 70s lawsuit guitars, even up into the mid 90s. So, but where were these sold? These were sold in shops like Ishibashi, Kurosawa Gaki, and Shamamura Music. They often commission these exclusive models. And I've tracked it down to, it's possible that it was Kurosawa Gaki that ordered this exclusive, this legend domestic only model back in 94, 95, and 96. And then, of course, Aria Pro 2 completely sent their production over to Korea and China at that point. So that was the end of that. But so this was the boss at Kurosawa Gaki would make a phone call to the Aria 2 Pro rep and say, hey, I have a need this year for some mid-tier guitars, American style Teles and Strats, and I'd like them to be coming at this price range. What can you do for me? And they would order, a few hundred of them or less, and they would show up, and of course these would get sold out. And now hindsight being 2020, if we were around back then like I was, because I was in Japan while this guitar was being made. That's the thing that's a kicker. And this is a '96, and I was heavily touring Japan in '96. So I was there when this guitar was being made, and while these things were going on, I was oblivious to it. Hindsight being 2020, I would have rushed down to the music store and bought 10 of them and just kept them for now, knowing how rare and how great they are. But of course, I didn't know that, and most people at that time didn't know that. And so, therefore, it's not that they were hiding them, it's just they weren't looking outward, and people weren't really looking inward. If you happen to stumble into one, like the owner of Millennial Music did with his, him being a luthier and a music shop owner, he saw something in it that he kept it as one of his personal guitars. And these guitars were for Japanese players by Japanese makers, sold in Japanese stores. So the only reason that I got hip to it and was able to use it for a couple of shows is because I was introduced to it by a Japanese person, a Japanese musician. And so there's that. That's why they fly under the radar. It's it was a great time, guys. guys. I touch upon it every now and then, but I was so lucky to be in Japan at that time because it was a time period that will never come back again. I can't describe it. Even if I wrote it in 1,000 words, I couldn't relate to you how interesting of a place that was. Very vibrant. Even with they still acted like the bubble was still going on. It still hadn't quite sunk into people that the bubble had crashed. They were partying it up. But they were doing a lot of stuff like this, creating a lot of instruments. There was a lot of churn. So there's that. The Japanese were historically the best isolationists. Yeah. And so they, again, like I said, they were able to, in a lot of ways, and I'll say this, it's just like with the sake. The good sake, if you drink that stuff, if you know that stuff, it's the only alcohol that I'll consume, to be honest with you guys. It's the only one that I can consume, and even in small amounts. That's why it comes in those little tiny cups, which is good. Is kept domestically. The really good stuff it never goes out because, of course, for the same reasons with these guitars, they don't produce a lot of it. It's really just for the domestic market, and you kind of got to be there in order to snap it up when it hits the shelves. If not, then there it is. And so yes, that plainly cuts across the board with a lot of stuff in Japan. Yes, certainly, Mike. Hey, welcome, Mike, by the way. How you doing? And that's the point of this, too, is because when Kurosawa Gaki called up Aria Pro II rep and said, we want to come at this price point, what do you got? In 96, they were still hand making guitars. Like I said, this is a handmade guitar. The binding, all that stuff, and the quality of the hardware is going to be slightly better than you would find on a budget guitar. We've been through that with seeing the different stages of Grecos that we've gone through. Is that really where they make those changes are in the pickups and the hardware. And then and then some of the more fancier things, like in this case, this is a through body with the strings. Usually, on the cheaper ones, it's just you hook in at the tail end. Through body design like this is again showing that it is a higher tier guitar. So there's that. Now, the best domestic only models that you've never played, getting in with tonight's title. For example, by the way, it was mentioned to me the Buckaroo in the last discussion. And I know the Buckaroo because you run into them infrequently on the Japanese sites. Buckaroo, just much like this Aria Pro II, it was their mid-tier produced teles from the 70s. And the Buckaroos, actually in some cases, they rival the Fenders that were being made at that time. And I found one. I was just cruising around and saying, oh, that's right, the Buckaroo. Let me look into that again because I hadn't seen one around. And I did a search in my normal places, and I found one, a thin line. And those go for, over $1,000. They weren't that much back in the day, but I found a thin line Buckaroo from the 70s, and I might if it's still around next month when I do my buying, I might buy it because there may be something there that would interest one of my clients. But again, a sleeper guitar. The Greco Go series with carved tops and dual mini humbuckers. Basically, think of a Rickenbacker had sex with a PRS, and this was the baby. These are, sleepers. that I see every now and then that you may want to take a look at. Again, the Greco Go series, the Tokai Custom Editions. Um, some of these in the 80s, the early 80s, these Tokai Customs, they rival anything that Fender was doing at the time, or Gibson was doing at the time. Particularly with their Strats, their HSS Strats, with their hot rodded pickups and micro tilt necks, were really forward thinking, and a lot of them were played by non-Japanese players. You can find the Steve I types of the day and age, a photo of them or two of them. The Fernandez Revival series, the Fernandez RS series. If you guys don't know about that, you really should. Um, these really mimic early 60s Fenders. Um, the only difference is the wiring configurations. But other than that, this is a sleeper guitar. The Fernandez Revival series, the RS series. Those are the, if you're looking for a high-end Japanese Strat that you can still find at a reasonable price, because the Grecos and Tokais are creeping up there. I deal in them, so believe me, I know. The Fernandez RS series, if you can find one. That's a sleeper. They were only made for Japan only, but some of them crept out. And even still, like I said, if you're feeling brave, you can go online, find a Japanese retailer, and put in a request for them to find one for you. They're worth having, at, as long as you keep the price reasonable on it. The Yamaha Studio Lords. The Studio Lords, we had a Studio Lord in. I bought a Studio Lord. If you go back to last December, maybe I think it was, we had the Studio Lord in. I really thought that those were great. Les Pauls. I enjoyed that Studio Lord, and again, that Studio Lord was a domestic only thing. Of course, maybe a few more. They made a few more of those that crept out through the Navy guys, for example. God, why can't I think of the name of that port? I heard it every day. Oh, Yokosuka. They would go out through Yokosuka. And that is a sleeper guitar that you may find locally. They may have gotten out of, especially if you're in California. Better chance of finding them there because there's Navy ports there. When proxy buying exploded, like me, I'm a proxy buyer, basically. If you were really to define me, I'm a proxy buyer. The prices exploded. These were secrets until they weren't anymore. So maybe not the best models you've never played. You might actually have a chance of playing one of these days if you keep your eyes open. Mike says, I remember that Studio was awesome. In my opinion, that one you had was clean. Yeah, that was clean. I only buy clean ones. That's the other problem with my my Guitar Safari, is that I insist on they have to be A quality, B plus and up. Is Takamine Japanese? Yes. That was a clean one. It was heavy though. The only gripe I got against that guitar, it was a 9-pounder, or close to 9 pounds, and that's heavy for me for a Les Paul. But other than that, it was nice. So, collectors are catching on, is the point of that. And the values are rising, but they're still well under the cost. Some of them are still well under the cost of buying even a modern mid-tier guitar, if you know what you're looking for. And these are hidden gold. I'm so stoked. And by the way, I got it in Sunburst, three-tone Sunburst. That was actually a rare model. Most of them came in red, I found out. Like the one that I played, the one that I brought, it was red, candy apple red with white binding. This one is a three-tone Sunburst. This was a red, because those, always with runs, if you notice with a lot of these makers, The sunburst guitars are usually the ones they make the fewest of. Because they are in demand, but they're not going to be as high of demand as a solid color, for example. So, I think that's why it was that even made this one even rare. And the fact that it came up is just cool because it just, it's a rare one in that regard, even, amongst in its production run. I was in Tokyo in 2010. I never seen Orville's before. There was shops full of them. So cool, yeah. And it shocks you because you've never seen it before. And you're like, hey, what's this? This looks like, this feels right, And you start playing around with it. Well, as soon as I get some bread put together, I'm going to get one of these. And I did, Got a few of them. And, but at first, I had to learn about what they were. Did Orville only do the Les Paul type, a shape? No, they also did specials as well. They also did specials. The retail prices of lawsuit Les Pauls has skyrocketed. Yeah, because again, you're looking in the cases of some of the 1200s of models like the Grecos, some of the really high 800, 1200. You're looking again the yen price. You're looking at specs that custom shop guitars today offer. I just showed you that Indonesian-made Fender for 600 euros is complete plywood compared to this mid-90s Telecaster that I have coming in, and at a fraction of the price. And that's why I don't understand, guys. I sit here night after night, week after week, talking about you should get the best quality at the best price you can. And if you're not, you're either being, you're not educated. Well, you should be because you listen every night, every Wednesday and Sunday night here. We talk about guitars. So certainly you've learned a few things, and you guys have taught me a few things in regards to that as well. However, applying it is another thing, and there may be a fear factor there of ordering something from overseas. I can guarantee you, speaking from personal experience, dealing with the Japanese is one of the safest and easiest things that you could possibly imagine in the world of retail. They will not rip you off. They will not screw you over. They will not play games. This is what it costs. We'll do this deal. Okay, we got your money. We're packing it up. It's on its way. And boom, it hits your front door. So don't let that be a barrier for you to not look into these things. Because again, if your goal, I can look at that guitar and say, I'm good. Because I got, a Telecaster now finally that's made right. So one of the reasons I had a problem with that custom vibe, and the reason I have a problem with this Fender standard Telecaster is because they're not made right. They're not made right. And that's important to me, actually. Even that parts caster Strat that I put together, it's made right. It's made correct. Mike says, Chris Buck did an awesome, great video about restoring a 1200 Greco Les Paul. Yeah. Those things. And you've got something, that he demonstrated, rivals a custom shop for $5,000. Whereas that can be had for between $1,800 and $2,200 US. Okay? You don't even have to restore some of them. I can find one for you that looks like it just, popped out of Ishibashi yesterday. Clean ones out there. But, yeah, that's a factor, certainly. The value rising, but still under custom shop pricing, still under the pricing of some of the stuff, well, all of the stuff that's coming out of Indonesia, for sure. Or used to be China, and before that Korea. But anyway, you get my point. So this is really talking about, hidden gold for players who want tone and feel without the hype machine, A, and B, with the quality of a guitar that you can feel, when you can feel it, and when you got a quality instrument in your hands, guys, as you know, a lot of you guys have them, you know it, and it inspires you to play well. Yeah, you can make a cheap guitar work, but no, there's just something about a guitar that has that gravitas to it. And a lot of these domestic guitars are the best guitars you'll never play. Well, maybe you will if you're lucky. are ones that you should do some digging. I've given some examples here tonight, and you should dig into some of those. Again, the Fernandez Revival series. Say it again, the Fernandez Revival series. That you talk about nice guitars. You might want to take a look at that. You might want to go in that direction. I'm just saying. Mike says they only made approximately 500 of those top line. Yes, again, these were small runs. A lot of it, as I covered tonight, really was for the domestic market only, and it was military guys and guys, some musician guys like me who were rolling, black musicians and others that were rolling through at that time. R&B music was huge. Most of the musicians that were going over to Japan at that time were African American, and there's big demand for that. And a lot of cats I knew, they were buying their stuff over there and bringing it back, and those were the instruments that when they went back, a lot of them came from the East Coast. When they went back to New York and Detroit, places like that, those Japanese guitars and basses are the ones that they kept and the ones that they played. Maybe even to this day, if those guys are still around. But that's a fact of the matter. But they did make a lot of them. Production numbers on these were very small. This Legend Telecaster I have coming in, I doubt, like I said, they probably made about 200 of them, tops, maybe. And that's why they just don't come up. But when they do, if you're keeping your eyes open like I have for 5 years now, not actively looking, but just keeping it in the back of my mind as I'm scrolling through things. And when I saw that a few weeks ago, I got super excited. And I didn't want to jinx myself until I knew my agent had it in his house. As soon as he sent me a picture of it, then I could start talking about it. But it's certainly, a sleeper. It is the sheer definition of it. Less than the golden era Gibson bursts that go for $500,000 each. Yeah, dig that. Cruise Maniac sound is another one to look out for. Get some custom shop quality, about 1/4 of the cost. Yeah, Maddie, absolutely. There were a lot of models that companies like Aria Pro II would have a domestic model, and then they would have a UK model. A lot of stuff actually went to the UK. Sometimes it would go to the UK unbranded. It would just say, for example, Legend in the case of this. And there would be a few in the shops, and they would be, lawsuit era headstocks for sure on a lot of that stuff. But it's interesting, a lot of stuff, UK was really the destination of a lot of stuff. And not here in mainland Europe, interestingly enough, but the UK during that time period. So if you're in the UK, you actually stand a great chance to actually find some of these sleepers. They're still, slagging, maybe your dad or your grandpa or something like it, starts, putting them away, and keep an eye on their guitar collection, because you might find a keeper there. Or certainly at the pawn shops, if such thing exists there. Scott says, I really like countries like Sweden and Japan that embrace Americana and put their own spin on it. Yeah, I do too. I hope to visit Sweden here. I'm sure I will. I have no doubt. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home to stay here in the Netherlands. So from here, most of Europe is a hop, skip, and a jump. I'm sure over the years I'll go to most of those places and check those places out, God willing. And should be interesting. Go to a guitar shop in Norway. That'd be interesting. That'd be, or Sweden, But anyway, getting back to Japan, Japanese guitars. I just point this out to you guys tonight. I use it as a discussion point because this was a two-part. I didn't want to talk about all this in one discussion in the last live stream. I wanted to break it into two parts, but this is the second part of that, and this is the last part of it. But it's just to talk about those domestic-only guitars. There's not a lot of discussion out there on YouTube about that market. It's another reason I wanted to put this video out. is to bring that information to the forefront, that there was such thing as a Japanese domestic only market, and that in that market they had very small runs of some in the mid tier and the upper tier range of really, really nice stuff. As a matter of fact, if going up, if I say, okay, let's go up from that Fender standard Telecaster, let's go up to the next stage, the American, let's see. Yeah, let's look at the American Performer, for example. And again, what we got here? We've got the body is spruce. So not outer. Spruce is okay. It's better than basswood. It's better than popular, but it's not ash or outer, the two preferred woods for a Telecaster. And again, you've got a maple neck on this one, but it at this price range, which is 1,300 euros, actually 1,400 with the tax. Oh, sorry, 1,599. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. For this, you'll get, of course, if you buy it with the maple fretboard or the rosewood fretboard, same price. Okay. But it does have those real things. But the body, again, in this case, you're paying $1,599 and you're not getting outer. It isn't until you get into, where did I find it? Right here. Is this correct? Sorry, guys, a little slow. In this case, with the Performer, now finally you're getting an outer body, and probably a 3-piece outer body, to tell you the truth of it. So it isn't until you get into the close to $2,000 range that you start to get the specs on this mid-90s domestic only Japanese Telecaster that I have coming in. So you begin to understand why Chris Buck was pointing that out, I'm sure, with that 1200 that he was redoing, is that you've got a lot more bang for your buck with these guitars. Can you imagine? Again, like I said, all right, Aria Pro II is not Fender, but it's pretty well respected and it's well known. So if you got that on your headstock, then, but you're getting a better guitar for cheaper, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Is basically the point of all this. This isn't, I would not spend $2,000 in order to get the same specs that I can get on a guitar for less than $200. Who would? Now, of course, that $200 guitar is a needle in the haystack. You got to do a little digging to find it, but I think that's that's about a $1,800 savings haystack that's worth digging through, Quality versus a snob appeal. Absolutely, Mike. That's the point that I'm trying to get. Quality for your money. Quality for your money, because when you buy it and it goes up with the 7,000 other ones on Reverb, then you're going to find out that, you got it depreciated a lot more than you thought. So therefore, if you want to have something of quality, because quality tends not to depreciate. On the same scale, this guitar is worth, I get out of it what it always was worth. If you're into that, this is mine. I'm keeping it. But even from a personal standpoint, I know I have a quality instrument that was handmade, and that's important. Got to look past that headstock. I got 2 Aria Pro 2s, a Strat, and a Tele, I think, for about $200 a piece. Haven't looked back. I'm not gonna look back either. I can't wait for this Aria Pro II Tele to come in and show it to you guys. That I'm just not that I'm good because I played it before. Hell, I played it live, or at least it's the same guitar, different color, but I've played that guitar live. I know how you can listen to me play it live on YouTube. You can hear how it sounds and say, yeah, that actually sounds like a good guitar. And I found one. I've been looking for one, and I'm not going to look back for under $200. And this is coming from a Fender salesman. Yeah. Again, quality. If you've been around enough of this stuff, if you've been around enough guitars for enough years, you begin to look for the quality, not what it says on the headstock. That's the truth. That's the truth. It's a beginner's move to go for the headstock, to be honest with you. The real pros are always looking for the quality. And that's just the truth of it. So, I will end this series on Japanese guitars with that. You can find them. You can go to guys like me, to find it for you. I really like your Epi Gold Top. Yeah, that Epi Gold Top was nice. But that went in a trade as well. No, there's nothing I can say about that guitar. I really like that one. That's another one that I'm sorry I had to do a deal on, but at the time I needed to do the deal. But I never bought that with any intention of keeping it anyway. That was always for sale. I wanted to keep it because I liked it, but I can't have that kind of emotional tie. And that's another reason why this Aria Pro 2 is perfect for me, because it's an absolute keeper guitar. I got it for nothing, and its value really is in the quality to me, and also just the memory of the fact that, hey, I've gigged with one of these guitars and they're great. So in front of a lot of people, and they thought it was great too. So that's all the stamp of approval I need. They didn't care. They didn't know that that wasn't a Fender Telecaster. None of the people in the audience knew. And nobody in my band said anything other than you sounded great tonight. Mike, what's your thought on Ornsby guitar? I have no thoughts on those. Actually, I haven't delved into it, so I'm sorry. I can't help on that one. Yeah. So, food for thought, guys. Food for thought. You might. Do you still have the 59 Epi? No, Mike. I have moved out. I moved out of my my Les Paul phase and went into my Stratocaster phase. And now I see now that I've put together a Strat that I like, sounds great, and put a few of them together for my nephew and others, and sold quite a few. Got another one coming up here right now that's pretty damn special. Fender, a 1984, 85 Fender ST62 from the same guys who brought you Tokai. I'm good on Strats. I see I'm moving with this Telecaster. I'm moving back into my Telecaster phase. I go through phases, and but I think the last guitar that I'm looking for myself personally, because I got a great acoustic. My mandolin I've had for years, so I don't need another mandolin. I've got a Strat I like. I've got a Tele on its way that I know I'm going to like. Is some kind of, again, like I said, 335, 355, something like 325, something like that. Good style guitar. But no, that Epi, I moved it. But you notice I didn't mention in any of that having a Les Paul model, because I can't handle Les Pauls anymore. It's just uncomfortable for me. And but my Strat with the HH configuration actually sounds like an SG. ES339, yeah. I'll find one. I'm not seriously looking right now, but it'll be a Japanese one for sure. It'll be a made in Japan model. It's just going to have to be at a time when there's so many other things that, like I said, I'm looking for a digital recorder, as you guys know. maybe a Yamaha SA 2000. I had the SA 700 in, Mike, as you know. Lovely guitar, not for me. If the 2000, is a better quality than the 700, obviously in terms of wood and whatnot, but still, it's basic same guitar. It wasn't for me. You can check that out. It's on my channel. I have the SA 700. Same here. I have 7 LPs. I love them all, but hate to play them. Yeah, whereas with that Strat, that Squire SE, parts caster there, I can sit on my couch because it's light. I can sit up 7 pounds. I can sit there on my couch and just strum and practice with it. And whereas with the Les Paul, I was sitting there and it's just not. It's not sitting on your couch strumming kind of instrument. And that's kind of where I'm at right now at the stage of the game. Yep, saying, are you going dollarless, Mike? Seems to be true. Yes, I'm going dollarless. Yeah, absolutely. It's a trend that I'm happy to see and that I'm joining into, and I'm looking. But I got bills to pay, just like everybody else, and so I have to set a budget for something like that. That I don't have something that I can sell. Like I sold the custom vibe. It was really part of a deal, but it's how I kind of justify it in my mind. I sold the custom vibe so I could take the Aria Pro 2 in, Telecaster. I don't have anything that really takes the place of selling in terms of DAW, so when I go dollarless, that's just going to be an outright investment. I'm trying to keep it under 300 euros for in Japan, but then shipping comes in, so I got to figure that. So 380, 400 at the end of the day, and I bet you I'm looking for a DP 32. I bet you I can get a DP 32 for that price used in Japan. Just had to be the right day, right time, and 32 tracks. It's great. I got 7 Les Pauls as well as 5 Eppies and 2 Gibsons. Yeah, man. I don't have too many. I just want to have those few. But but you gotta find it. You gotta find it. And again, it's got to be on a day when you have the money available and it's for sale. And as easy as that sounds, it's not. Because life happens between those two things. All right, guys, I think that's it for tonight. I think we beat this horse to death. I think we can move on to the next one. I appreciate you taking the time to tune in tonight and watch this live stream, especially all the way to the end. I want to thank all of my usual crowd here for coming in and listening in and enjoying this live stream. I'm so happy to bring it. I'm tired tonight for some reason. I'm going to go into the next room and, well, first wash up and then go to bed. And but I made it through myself, which I'm surprised. But I think it was a good conversation tonight, and I enjoyed having all of you gentlemen here as always. I want to thank you, all of you guys, for tuning in, whether you watch this live or in the rerun. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section again, guys. I know it seems like a small thing, but it's actually the only payment that I request in return for doing these, just to hear your thoughts and have a chat with you one-on-one. In any case, you guys take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.